Top 5 most common issues we see in manuscripts: boring dialogue. I'm Karin Beery with Right Now Editing, where we turn good manuscripts into great books.
And I'm Peg Thomas, multi-award winning author and editor, and we are two editors for 5 minutes.
And I'm going to get this clock started as we talk about boring dialogue.
Do we
There are
have
different
to?
there's
Because it's so
I know
boring.
it's boring. We don't want to talk about it. Um the thing to remember about dialogue, it is much more difficult to write well than people realize because you're really having to learn almost a new language because it has to be realistic and believable, but it cannot be too realistic and believable.
But
Otherwise, it's boring.
I think but
Like,
like
I,
I could go on and on about this, but I don't know it's
yes,
just how people
exactly.
talk.
Which is fine. And maybe you have a character who stumbles over their thoughts or speaks before they really think. So they trip over their tongue and all of these extra words pop out.
Did you put me in a
But in
book?
all, what was But in all honesty, when you're starting your sentences with well, so, like, you can literally cut hundreds, if not thousands of words from your book
Yeah,
by taking those off of the start of the sentence.
yeah.
But that's not actually the most boring that I've seen. The most boring dialogue, and what I'm starting to see most frequently, is small talk. Ladies and gentlemen, unless you have a couple that's going out on an awkward first date, cut the small talk. Now, yes, is it realistic that when I call Peg, she's going to answer the phone and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And she say, "Hey, I'm out on a walk. What are you up to?" And we'll have a little bit of small talk. There's not time for that in your book. Again, you can save thousands of words. So if you've written a 100,000 word manuscript and you need to cut 10,000 words, start looking for those ums, wells, likes, and look for the small talk.
And
Because if
it's
I'm in a
absolutely appropriate if there would normally be small talk, if that is appropriate to it, to say after a moment of small talk, you can just use it that way without having to word by word put all the small talk into the book.
But seriously, I've picked up manuscripts recently where every time someone talks on the phone, they say, "Hello, is this Ben?" "Yes, this is Ben." "Is this Caroline?" "Yes, it's Caroline. How are you today?" "Well, I'm fine, thanks. What can I do for you?" Every time somebody talks on the phone, it drags on. A good rule of thumb that I like to tell people is to show your readers once, and if you need to repeat, if you want your readers to remember it, maybe show it to them again in like 100 pages. But if you're trying to show them how a character introduces himself to someone, just show it once and then trust your reader to remember that. Because if you have to show that small talk every single time, it's boring and it takes up space. So Peg, what do you see in dialogue that's a little bit boring to you?
Oh my goodness, all the name calling, all the using each other's names because Karen, like we're having a conversation, Karen. And don't you think, Karen, that maybe it would be fun if you came up to visit up here this summer, Karen? Where they just constantly put the characters' names in. That's another great way to cut a lot. Because when two people talk to each other, they do not use their name over and over and over again. It doesn't even look natural.
So again, we don't want to just leave this out here and say, okay, this is bad. So how do you fix that? Like Peg said, check your dialogue for names. How many times, especially if it's only two characters in a scene, they're never going to call each other by their names. Check the start of your sentences for the well, so, um, we don't need those. And then just check for all of that small talk. When people first enter a room, when they're the first introduction, you want to see it happen. But anytime after that, when they're meeting or those phone calls, we don't need to see the description of the day. We don't need, unless there is something really unusual about the weather. We don't, it's enough to say it's hot. Man, it's hot out there and
So this
move
is
on.
slowing your story down. Anytime you do this, you're slowing your story down. If there's some reason where you want to slow the story down, say you need these characters to slow down because the bad guy's sneaking up behind them and you need to give them a little time to get there, you can use this as a tool, but like use it once in a book, once as a tool to slow down the story because it's not your best tool to do it. You'll annoy your reader.
That timing was perfect. Oh my gosh, Peg, it's almost like we're getting a hang of this or something.
Almost like we know what we're doing.
We don't.
We don't.
I that is all we have for today. So come back next week and Peg's going to start to talk about some of the most common things that she's seen in manuscripts and in books. Until then, I'm Karen Beery.
And I'm Peg Thomas, and we'll see you next time.